Hello everyone, it's Nick Lawson with CDC Take Charge Software, and this is lesson 2 on how to design the King James Bible Reader application in Alpha Software. Today what we're going to discuss is our main form, the Bible Reader form, the objects on the form, and the properties and the code that make those objects work. So let's bring it up in design mode so that we can look at it. Here's our form. Now, as you can see, it's a simple form with a bitmap image of a open book that has a kind of purple midnight blue background as an accent. On the form, we have just some text fields as descriptions. We have a list box, which is a list of volumes of the Bible, a progressive lookup field that will allow you to type as a search value for whatever you have in your list down here. We have a multi-state button which takes and based on your selection changes the list object to display the Bible by books, chapters, or verses. Here we have a auto display variable that if set to true, as you scroll through the list it automatically writes the selections into your memo field over here so you don't have to keep clicking and going back and forth. Then we have all our action buttons down here: display selection, add selection to reader, print selection, bookmark selection, email selection, and close. The only one we're going to discuss today is display selection. Okay, now first on our form we set some variables. So from the drop down menu you select form, click on variables, it brings up your define new variable box. Here we have vSelection, we make it blank on the form or in our box. We have auto display, we set the value to false as a default. And then don't worry about that one down there. We have no list or layout variables, we have no global variables. On our initiate of the form, we take and set vBooks, which is our progressive lookup, to blank. That way when a person loads the application, they're seeing the field is blank, and when they start typing it works right from the get-go. We take and declare vList as a shared list. Then we build our variable verse name. Verse name is the variable which is used to create our first list object of all volumes in our application. That's set to all plus control line feed plus word unique table external record contents get verses and pulling back the volume name by record number. Now the reason we use word unique is there are over 35,000 verses in the Bible, which means there's 35,000 records in the verses table. So to avoid having to display Genesis hundreds of times that they would have to look through and Exodus hundreds of times, we simply take and bring back one unique value for each example in the volume field. Same thing with vList. vList is bringing back the book name, and again we only want a unique example. vList is the variable that sets our second list object on our form. And then VCE is set to books as a default. That is our multi-state button. Once we set those, we have to take and change the value of our watch variables, CDV for our first list and SCDV for our second list. That's pretty much it for the on and initiate, and it allows the object to display so that they can start using it right away. Now let's look at how the bitmap image is embedded on our property. This error message just means that the form is in maximize mode even though I don't display it that way. So if I go to backdrop, here I'm telling it to use a bitmap. The bitmap is a file I created, which is an open book, and I include that image file, JPEG, in my folder for my application. That way, if I make the application portable and give it to other people, the image file exists, so it automatically displays when you open the form, and there's no issue. I also had the choice of embedding the image or building a image library and then sending that with the application. To me, this is the simplest procedure. Alright, now the vSelection, this variable, again, the properties on this is pretty straightforward. It's a list box, and then the choices, as I said, are verse name, and there's the watch variable. The progressive lookup, basically as you type in it, whatever is displayed in this list, it'll sort you through the list as fast as it can. Our multi-state button here, when we take and go to on change for it, it takes and displays whatever our choice is in our vSelection, and if it's all, it displays all. If it's by whatever the multi-state choice is, otherwise it just takes and uses whatever value is in the vSelection and displays by book name or chapter name or verse name equal whatever your selection of vSelection is. Then we take and redisplay our list, and again, it's done. Pretty simple. The next object is VCE, and the only thing that happens when we change records on VCE is if auto display is set to true, whatever our choice is, it pushes our display selection and displays it in our memo field. That's pretty cool, and it's pretty simple to do. All I did is on change. Here it says if auto display equals true, then King James Bible Reader button 1 push. Then I just take and activate VBooks, and I'm done. Very simple. Now, here, we don't have to do anything on the auto display. When we set it, all the action is done on the change of record in our list object. The memo field is simply a memo field, and then vSelection does a lot. Let's look at that. Okay, here you go. Now, based on your choice, whether it's a book or chapters or verses, it goes out to the appropriate table. We have the Bible in 3 separate tables. One is by books, so every record in the book table is a full book from the Bible. Then chapters, where every record is a chapter in a book in the Bible. So chapter 1 in Genesis, chapter 2 in Genesis, chapter 5 in Exodus, chapter 10 in Revelation. So just whatever you want. Then verses. Verses, of course, is the big one. That's every verse in the Bible, and it's pretty huge. And each verse is its own separate memo field. Now, by using a posting rule to take and pull from our external tables and display in our reader, I'm able to take and find the value that I want and just automatically write it in, and it just takes a second to do that. Then we get down here to life issues. We will discuss life issues at another time because that's a separate script that has to take and run, and it is pretty big. So we'll look at that as a separate lesson. Okay, then once all it comes in, we just take and refresh the form, and away you go. Now let's look at how all that works. So we talked about it, so let's see it in action. Okay, here I'm going to go to my display menu off of my clock, King James Bible Reader. There's my form. So as you can see, it opened just like I said, all is selected. Our progressive lookup is blank, and our multi-state button is set to books, and my list displays all books in the Bible. So if I want to use the progressive lookup, I can type in J, and it goes to the first one, Joshua. See? Pretty simple. Now, if I'm looking through the Bible, I don't have to scroll through the list. I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is start typing, and I've got my book. Then I can hit display selection, and it'll show up over here. If I want to see Old Testament books, I select Old Testament. If I want to see New Testament, New Testament. Revelations is one by itself. That's it. If I want to take and display Revelations, over here, I click Display. There's the book Revelations in my reader, and I'm able to do it. Now, as I said, see, that posting roll was very fast. See, that didn't take any time at all. Uh, life issues, and a reason we'll discuss it later, we build a list of all life issues that we feel verses in the Bible address. Illness, financial, depression, loneliness, fear, worry, troubles, decision making, bereavement, death, sin, and what did Jesus say? So all these are things that a lot of people like to search for, and we have them all broken out to the best of our knowledge the way they should be read in the Bible. And then keyword search allows you to search, which I don't have that done yet, but it'll allow you to search for specific words and display them in our memo field. Okay, now we said, what about the auto display? Well, let's go to verses, and we're in New Testament. So here's our New Testament verses, starting with Matthew. So I select Matthew 1. If I click on auto display, then when I take and go through my list, it automatically switches. So I can go back and forth down here. That's pretty cool. Now, and that makes reading the Bible very easy. A person just go right on through the list and read verse after verse after verse after verse until they're tired. Now let's set it to auto to no, because I want to show you something. You can also build an ad hoc list of verses over here. So I'm on Matthew chapter 1 verse 7. But let's say I want to add chapter 1 verse 13 to it. So I click down here and I click add selection to reader. There it is. That's pretty cool. Makes it easy to take and build a list of verses the way you want to see them, and then you can bookmark that selection and make your own notes about it and keep it forever. Very cool. Well, that's it for today. If you follow it on the blog, read through the blog, because the details of how these objects work and the code that makes it happen will be listed in the blog. Thanks a lot and have a great day.